we have done this advanced permissions, that is what this extra zero, about the extra zero, and we have done it already. We have done sticky bit, SGID and SUID. Now after this sticky bit, SGID and SUID, now we'll see next advanced permission. This is the last one in the permissions, and this is called SUDO. This is called SUDO. SUDO. Now what this means, SUDO? It is actually means SU means super wait super, U means user, and this is do. And do means we know what the meaning of do. So this SUDO means super user do. What super users can do, and super user is who? It's root. Root is a super user, and what super user can do, that means what root user can do, that is we can give the permission to normal user also. So it is actually giving super users permission to normal user. Now by default we have only one administrator in our Linux machine, that is root user, and every other user we create in Linux, they all consider as a normal user. Every other user will be considered as a normal user, and they will not have any privilege of super user, that is root. As you can see previously when we run the SUID, so whenever any process run by any user, that process will get the privilege of that particular user, and that particular user machine defined by the UID. So by the UID, machine knows that this is the user, and what the privilege this user will get. So what the privilege user will get, it defines by the UID, and only user root has the UID of 0, and that is root is the only administrator we have. Now if you are having a server, a big server which is running multiple services, so every other services, every other application cannot be handled by only one user, and that is root. So actually if you are having a company and that company has lots of things configured on their server, they have lots of configuration on the server of Linux server, so everything is cannot be managed by only one person, but we have only one administrator, that is root. So what we have different levels of administrators in organization. We have top level administrator, which has all the permissions of doing everything. Then you will get to the second level, third level administrators. Those will not have the all permission, they will have some of the permission to do some of the task. So if you are having a top level administrator, now he will use the root account, he will use the root and he will get all the permissions. So the top administrator will get the root account. Now the second or third level administrators, they will get the normal accounts, and they will get normal accounts, and they cannot run the root account commands. So what we can do there for them, we cannot make them as a root. We cannot make them root, but we can't give them a root account password because it is top level administrator's account, or it is having all the permission on the system. So what we want control permission to those users, those administrators, and that we can do by using the sudo. With the sudo we can do what? We can give a control permissions to normal users, control permissions of root, that means administrators. We have done SUID previously, and if you remember SUID, what we did that time, we set the UID of the user owner on the file, like this file. This is a command file, and it's a command file of bin. So what happened, whenever the command runs, system feels that it is run by the owner, and that is root. Now whoever runs it, like user 1 runs, user 2 run, user 3 run, any user run, it runs by root, and it will get the privilege of root. I will give you one more example of this. You remember the fdisk command? I shows you the fdisk command. Now this command is under sbin. That means it can only be run by administrator, that is root. It can only be run by super user. Now if you check the permission of this, so actually the permission is same as cat command. If you see, owner user is having read write execute, group owner read execute, and others are also having read execute. Now others are having read execute means any user can execute it. That means root user and all the normal users can execute the command. So command is executable with everyone, but when they execute the command, when normal user execute this command, they will not get what output which this command do. So it will not give the output because it runs by the privilege of that user. If root user runs it with the option, it gets the output because it runs by the root user. So system knows that it is running by the root, so it is having a privilege to do the work and to use the command, and it gives the output. Now when the normal user runs it, you see it is not getting the output. Any normal user will not get the output because it is run by that user's UID. But it is running it. It can run it because it has a permission to execute. All the other users are having a permission to execute, but they are not getting the output. Now if I set the UID, SUID on that file, on this command, chmod 4755, 755 is the default permission, or let me do it by like this, user owner plus s on usr sbin fdisk. Now I set the UID on this command. Now what happened when normal user runs it? You see previously it was not getting the output. Now it is getting the output. Now why it is getting the output? Because it is run by user 1, but the system feels that it is run by the root user because we set the UID of root on the file, and that means system feels that whoever runs does not matter, it is run by root user, and it is giving the output of that command. And now we can feel, or we can assume, like, is it a way to give a permission to every user, administrator permission? Is it a way to give a normal user administrator permission, like these commands to normal user? So we say no, it is not a way, because if you want to do like this, then you will not have any control, because the user 1 is running, so user 2 can also run, and it will also get the output. User 3 will also get the output. That means if you set the UID on these commands, these sbin commands, for the root commands, then anyone can run it. You will not have any control. So we should not do this. So for giving administrator commands, like administrator permissions to normal users, what we do is sudo. Now they will not able to run it. They run, but they don't get the output. So the proper way of giving administrators privilege to normal user is what? Sudo. It is called sudo. So the sudo means what? Sudo is for giving root users privileges to normal users. Now, root users privileges means that means normal users can run or I can say run super users commands from sbin directory, because we know in a bin directory whatever the commands are there, everyone can run it, and sbin command can only be executed by the super user, and that is root. And by this sudo we will have control. Remember, control is important. We will have a control on what commands users can run. So with this, we will have a control that what they can run and what they cannot run. Now, how to give the sudo permission to normal users? Now, to give sudo permission to normal users, now first what we can do, we can add users in a wheel group. In a wheel group, and users will get all the permissions. Now this is the first way. There is a group, there is a default group which is called wheel group. So if we want to make an administrator, if we want to make a normal user as an administrator, remember I'm not saying root, I'm not saying administrator, I'm saying as an administrator. So we can add them into this wheel group. This wheel group is already present. So if you add any user into this group, that user will get the all the privilege of root user. It will get all the permissions. It will get all the permission and it can run all the commands. This is the one way. And remember, when we create a normal user, when we are installing the system, remember when we are installing the graphical system GUI, and it asks us to create the normal user. So when you create the normal user, that user will also get the permission. That user also get the sudo permission by default, and that user also become a normal user. Because what system do, the system add that user into this wheel group. For example, we created this user. When I was installing this system, I created this user. If you see, when I was installing the system, I created this user, and you can see the UID of that user is 1000. That means it's the first user I created. This is the first normal user I created. Now if you check the ID of that user, now you can see here the UID of that user is this, the GID is also this is the primary group of that user, and the user is member of that primary group, and also it is a member of this group, and that group is what? Wheel group. And because of this group, this user, the user which we created when at the time of installation, it is getting what? Those sudo permissions by default. One more thing, when we create users graphically, if in case you are having a graphical interface and you create the users from graphically, like you say I want to create a user, so you have these two options, standard type and administrators. So if you select standard, then it will create a normal user and it will not add that user into wheel group. And if you select administrator, then what it will do? It will add the user into wheel group. Very simple, because the user will get the privilege. Or suppose we have existing user, let's say we have this user 5 and I want to change it to administrator. Remember, user 5 right now it is standard. If you check the ID of user 5, now you can see it is user 5 is member of its own group, own primary group, no other group. Now I will make it administrator here, so I change it to administrator. Now what? If you check this here, now again, now it is saying what? It is member of wheel group also. So this is a simple way to give sudo permission to any user. And now if I remove it, I make it standard, now it will become again the membership of this group will also, now again it is removed. Or if I do it command line gpasswd -a, add user 5 into wheel group. I did it in command line. I added this user 5 into wheel group. Now if I check graphically, now you can see, now it is showing it is administrator. Why it is showing administrator? Because the user is member of wheel group. This is as simple as it is. If you can remove it from here, that means it will be removed. Now it is not member of wheel group. So it is very simple. If you want to make a user, normal user, an administrator, that means if you want to give a full permission of the administrator like root permission, sudo permissions, remember sudo permissions to normal user, then you just make that user member of this wheel group.
Sir, what about if I wanted to remove as command line?
Just remove it from the group. Simple. You know the command, right?
Okay.
For removing the user, for adding what, gpasswd -a, and for removing gpasswd -d, and it will remove from the.
Yeah.
So if
Okay.
we want to make any user, or if we want to give a sudo permissions to any user, then we can just make that user a member of wheel group. This is a one way. This is first way. But how this wheel group is getting the permission? How this wheel group is getting sudo permission? And that is what we can do also. We can add users into sudo configuration file. That means, so either we can add it into the group, but this wheel group is also getting a permission from the sudo configuration file. So we can add the user directly in the sudo configuration file, and here we can manage what permission users will get. So we can add the user directly in the configuration file, and from there we can do what? We can manage the permissions. We can see like what permission user will get. We can manage the whole permissions of that user. So for adding user into the group, we know what is the command. We know gpasswd-a is the command to add it into the group. So we know what is the command to add the user into the group. So the second way is to add the user into configuration file. In the same way, the wheel group is also getting the permission. That means if suppose you want to give a permission to thousands or 100 of 50 users, you want to give same permissions. Then what? Instead of adding those users one by one, we can create a separate group, and then we can assign the group permission, and then we can add those 50 users into that group. So when we give a permission to the group, all the 50 users will get that permission. And we can do it by adding those group into the sudo file, sudo configuration file. Now to add users in sudo config file, so what we do, first we have an option, this, and remember this only can be done by root, vi sudo. We have this command to do this. So when you run this command vi sudo, it will open the configuration file of sudo in vi. Remember, it is opening the file in vi because the vi is the default editor. default command line editor of the Linux. By default it is VI. So it's here in VI. So it is opening the configuration file, sudo configuration file in VI. What is it saying? Sudoers allow particular users to run various commands as the root user without needing the root password. That means they don't need a root password for doing this. This file must be edited with vi sudo command. So when you run the vi sudo, it will open the file in vi editor, because it's a vi is the default editor of the Linux system. Now if you want, then you can directly open it in vim also. You can open it in vim, and the configuration file is this. You can see this is the name of that configuration file. So actually when you open it with vi sudo, it opens in the temporary location as a temporary file. It does directly not open the file, it open the temporary file, and when you save it, then it will save it into the main file. So if you open it with vi sudo, it will open in vi, and vi is not having a colors. So I wanted to open it in colors, so I can open the file directly by using vim command, and the name of the file is sudoers. That means super user doers, and it will open the same file, and you can see now colors, and this is the same file. Sudoers allow particular users to run various commands as the root user without needing the root password. So what we can do, we can run vi sudo command, and that will do what? Open sudo config file in vi editor, and if you like, then you can open it directly by vim, and the path for the file is this, and this is what open sudo config file directly in vim. I'm doing it only for colors. I wanted to see in colors because I like it. So I'm opening it in vim directly. Otherwise, the recommended way is to use the vi sudo. So the recommended way is to use the vi sudo to edit the file. Now you open the file. Let's take a review of the file. Now remember, any configuration file in Linux, when you open, these are said to be commented. When you see the lines are starting with hash, that means it is called commented. Commented means when the system reads the configuration file, it ignores these lines. It ignores these lines. These lines are just a comment to inform the user and administrator. Like it is saying here that what these sudoers are doing, and what it will do, and what is recommended for do. Like it is must be edited with the vi sudo command. So these are what commented. The lines which is not commented will be read by the system, and that will be applied. The lines which is commented, they will not be applied. Now remember, only one hash is important. The first hash is important, like it will say like this is comment or not. After first hash you can give anything, everything will be considered as a comment. So if you are having one hash, two hash, or any other hash, it will be considered as a comment. Now here you have some lines are two hashes and some lines are one hash. Now that is why, because they did what, the lines which is having two hashes, not in any other configuration file, not like this, only this sudoers file has like this configuration like this. These two hash files are like, these are comments, and this single hash means this is actually configuration, but it is not enabled. It is actually configuration, but it is not enabled actually, and we can enable it. And we can see what this is, the description for the configuration. So this is basically the description of the configuration, and this is the configuration example. This is a sample of configuration, and we can use this sample configuration by removing this hash. What is it saying? Host aliases. Groups of machines, you may prefer to use host names, perhaps using the wildcard for entire domains or IP addresses instead. So you can use or define the machines here. You can mention the name of the machine instead of, you can make the alias for the name. Like this is the machine name fs1, like file server 1, file server 2. So instead of typing these names, I will make a alias for that, file service servers. So whenever I want to mention these names, maybe it is 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, I don't have to mention every name one by one. I can mention only file servers or mail servers, and these we can configure. This is just a sample configuration. We can use it by enabling it, or we can create a new one here, just like that, for mentioning the name. Then you have the user aliases also here, like you can mention the user alias. You can also create the user aliases for different users, command aliases, and these are the command aliases. These are also not enabled. If you see, they are not enabled, but we can enable them. Now what that means, command aliases, let me show you this first. I'll go down here. Now this configuration is enabled here. Defaults said require TTY. TTY means you need to be on a terminal, otherwise it will not run. And what is the default? Visible password. Visible password, that means when you type the password, it will be visible. But did you know in Linux the passwords are not visible? It is actually not visible. This explanatory sign means not visible. And these are some default configurations, like setting the home, setting the environment, and different directories and time and all that. And then this is the path for running the commands, like sbin, bin, sbin. Then here we have an option to run commands, to give a permissions. Now if you want to give a permission to other users, then you can give it like this. First you will mention the username here, then you will mention the machine name, and then you will mention the commands. Now this, for these different things, there was an aliases for that. For users, you can create alias. Instead of mentioning 111 user, you can make an alias. Instead of mentioning the machine name, you can mention the alias. Instead of mentioning commands one by one, you can mention the alias. Just like this. First, this one is applied, and you can see root user is having all the commands permission. What it is saying, allow root to run any commands anywhere. And that is why, how it is getting by like this. Root is the username, then for machine name it is saying all. Now all means what? It can run the command on any machine. Remember, if you are in a domain kind of environment where you are having a server and your server machines, like your users, you create the users on server and those users can log into any other client machine. So you can define like where the user can run the command. So if the user can log in on machine 1, then it can run the command, and when it logins on machine number 2, it cannot run the command. So you can mention the machine name here if you are having a domain environment, but right now we don't have any, so we can say all, like all the machines. So any machine name it can run. Then what commands? So any commands, it is actually saying any commands it can run. It can run any command on anywhere in any machine with any options. Now if suppose you want to mention the group, then you will mention like this. Remember, this is username. System knows that this is username. So if you mention the group name, then you have to mention it like this. First you have to give percentage sign so that system knows that this is machine, and then you will mention the group name. And you can see this is which group? This is wheel group, and this is also enable. You can see there is no comment here. That means this configuration is also enabled, and this wheel group is getting all the permissions on all the machines, like anywhere. And why? That is why when you make any user member of this group, they use any permission of sudo. They get all the permissions of sudo. Now if you want to use a separate command, if you want to give a separate command to users, like you want the user can run only a command, only some commands, then you can mention it like this. You can directly mention the commands with the path like this. You can mention the user or group name here, then you can mention which machine, and then directly you can mention that this user can run this command, comma this command, and this command. So the user can only run those commands, no other commands. Like this, you can mention single command with options also. So if you want, then user can run only some commands, or instead of mentioning one by one each command, you can mention the command aliases. You can see these are the aliases. Networking command means it can run all the networking commands. Software means it can run all the software commands. Services command, storage command, delegating, process, locate, drivers. So you can assign users what command they can run, and these are what aliases. Now when you mention this, like if I said user 1 can run networking, so what networking commands? For that there is a default alias here, that which we have seen. These are what aliases for networking. So this is not enable, actually it is commented. So networking means what? User can run all these commands. So if I give this alias to any user, it can run all these commands. If I give this alias to any user, it can run all these commands. If I give this alias to any user, it can run all these commands, and so on. And if I give these aliases, if I mention these aliases, then I have to enable this, I have to uncomment this. Otherwise the system will not understand the alias, what the networking means. What networking means? These commands. But when system knows when I remove the comment. So if you want to use these aliases, so first you have to uncomment this aliases, and then you can mention these aliases with the user permissions. Now I want to give user 1 permission. So what I will do here, you know what, the best way is to, whenever you do changes in configuration file, so what is the best practice? It is to comment your configuration, so that whenever you want to remove your configuration, you know that where you have did the configuration, where you have made the changes. So commenting is a good practice to configure in any configuration file in Linux. So you will know that what you have done and what you have made changes. Like I want to add new user here. So what I will do, I will comment first. Remember, first hash is important. Now I am saying this is okay. Adding user 1 to sudo. This is what I am doing. Now here first comment is important. Rest of the things are only comment. And then I will close my configuration here. I'm making a design. It is looking good also. And what? Whenever I open the file, I know that this is changed by me. So for adding the user 1, first the name of the user, then where they can run the command. So I say all, because now we don't have any other machines. This is a single machine. What command they can run? So I'm using all. So it can run any command with any password, with any options also. So this is how I added the user into the sudo file. So what we did here, we just added the user into this. I just make a design, but it is a good practice to add this, add a comment, so that you know what you have done and what changes you have done. Then save it. Now when you are saving it, so open config file directly in vim and add these lines and save it. So add these lines and save it. Now for saving it, this is important. If you save this file, I will show you this. Now if you try to save the file, so what you do, you press colon WQ and then you will press enter. Now what it is saying here, it is saying read only. Read only option is set and you cannot save the file. Remember, if you are not able to save the file, then what you can do, you can save the file forcefully. Now it is saying read only and it is not allowing me to edit the file. Now when it is not read only, it is not able to, when you are not having a permission on a file, then you cannot write the file. And that means if you are not having a permission, you cannot edit the file. So if you are a normal user and if you are trying to edit any other user's file or root user's file and you are not having a permission on it, so it is not that you can save it forcefully. That means if normal user does not have a permission, they cannot do it. They cannot edit the read-only files because they don't have permission. But I am opening the file. I have opened the file with root account. I am a root user and root user can do anything. but root user has all the permission on every file. Now this file is also having a permission for root, but why it is not giving me permission to edit? So because actually it is why, because this file is used. So if any file is in used, then those files are not editable. But because root user is having all the permissions, so what it can do, it can edit the file forcefully. So because the file is in use, it is saying that you can't edit it, you can't save it, you can't change it. But because the root user is having a permission, it can do this, it can override this, it can do forcefully. It is not like any user can do this. No, any user cannot do this. Any user cannot change the file of any other users if they don't have a permission. Here in this file, root user is having a permission. Only because the file is in use, it is not allowing to save, but root user can do forcefully save it. Now forcefully save it because it is already in use. That means as soon as I save the file, it will apply. The permissions will apply. So when I save the file, permission will apply. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to restart the system. I don't have to do any other thing. When I save it, it will apply because the file is continuously in use. So I will save it. So remember, when you want to save the sudo file, you have to save it forcefully. Otherwise, it will not allow you to save, whether you are root or any other user. Normal users can't do this, but root user can do save forcefully. Now it is done. So I gave user 1 permission for sudo to run all the commands. Now we will check how this user can use the permission. Now if you see this is administrator command again. Now I logged in as a user 1. We have added user 1 into sudoers, and it has a sudo permission, but now it try to run the administrator command again. Now again it is getting the no output. Why? Because still it is not running. But we have already added the user into the sudoers file, but still it is not running, not giving an output, because this is not the way of running the sudo permission. It is not the way to get the sudo permission. So if you want to use the sudo permission, to use sudo permissions, user has to run the command. User has to run all commands with sudo, or we can say begins with sudo. That means if user wants to run fdisk command, then the command must begins with sudo. So when the user runs the command with the sudo, then user knows, system knows that you are running the command and you want to use the sudo permission. So it will go like this: sudo and the command. So command is f disk with -l option. This means what? Running fdisk command with sudo. So if the normal user wants to run the command, then it will do what? It will start the command with sudo. So any command he wants to run, it will run by sudo. Normal commands it can run normally, but sudo command it has to start with sudo, like administrator commands. So administrator's command has to start with sudo. And that is why when I'm running the command fdisk directly, whether the user is having a permission, it is not giving an output. Because what? It is not using the sudo permission. It is not indicating the system that I want to use the sudo. Now, if he wants to use the sudo permission, then it will use sudo command first. And then it will mention the command which it wants to run. Now when it runs this, when it requests the enter command, it will give you this information. What it is saying here, it is saying we trust you have received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. It usually boils down to these three things: respect the privacy of others, think before you type, and with great power comes great responsibility also. So it is giving you a special information here that you are going to run some commands which is maybe harmful, maybe you don't know what you are doing. So before you run, you're getting this information here that respect the privacy of others. That means don't get into other users information, think before you type, think what you're running, what commands you're running, maybe it will harm your system. With great power comes great responsibility also. That means you are given the power of root, so you are also responsible for the reason, for the things you will do. Now it is asking the password. Password for user 1. Remember, it does not need the password for root. If you give a password for root, that means you are having a root account. So we don't give you the password of root. It is only asking the password of that user itself. Now why it is asking the password for that user? Because maybe suppose some other user runs the command on the user 1 terminal. Like user 1 is logged in here, and for some reason, like he goes there to get a water, to drink a water, he just goes there for a minute. So some other user come into the terminal and he just run the sudo command and it can do anything. If you do, and this should not be happen, so that it asks the password for the user 1 itself, but it asks only the first time when you type the sudo command, and this information will also come only first time. So the user 1 password is ABC, and you get the output. Now next time when I again type the command, it will not ask me the password, it will not give me any information, it will just run. It will just run. So the first time when the user runs the command, so first time when user use sudo, it will get information and ask password of the user itself. So it will ask the password of that user itself. Remember, it is the password of the user 1 itself. Now if you run the first time, it will ask the password. Next time it is not asking. That means what? If suppose I go after giving the password, I run the sudo command and then I give the password, I run the command. Now I'm not doing anything, I just go there to drink a water, and then the someone has come here and then he runs the command again. Now it can also happen, so this sudo password, it will cache, actually it is cached for 5 minutes. So by default, the password, okay, first I will say like, next time if user runs, or if user uses the sudo, if user uses the sudo command, it will not ask password, because the password will be cached. So the password will be cached and it will remain in the cache. So whenever you run again the commands with sudo, it will not ask the password again and again, because it is what ease of use. You don't want to give password every time. You will be frustrated. So because of ease of use, it does not ask the password every time. But it will not remain, it will not remain all the time in the cache. The cache, so by default, the password the password will remain in cache for 5 minutes. So it will remain in 5 minutes, and after that it will ask the password again. That means one first time when you run the command sudo, it will ask the password, and then it will remain in the 5 minutes. The cache, the password will be cache. So next time when you run any command, it will not ask you the password again and again. It will remain in the cache, but the cache will be for only 5 minutes. After the 5 minutes, when you run the sudo command again, it will ask the password again. If you want to increase or decrease the time, you can do it in the sudoers configuration file. You can do this in the sudoers configuration file, and for that you can check the man file for sudoers. You can check the man file, what other configurations you can add. By default it is not there, but if you want to change this caching time, then you can check the sudoers configuration, sudoers man file, to get the information about how we can edit the file. Like for more configurations on sudo, we can check the man files, man page of sudoers. We can check the man page for the sudoers for more configuration. What are the user alias, run alias, host alias, name alias, how we can mention the user name. There are lots of different, lots of many more configurations are there. Default parameters and values. What is password? No password. So there is lots of different configurations are there which you can get it in this sudoverse. Configuration file, and it also has the time caching time configuration also, and I think we have to find it. Always set home, authenticate, classroom override, environment editor, and this is to change the environment editor. Like this is to change the default editor. When you use the vi sudo command, it always open in vi editor. If you want to open it in vim, then you can change it by this environment editor. This means environment reset. If set, sudo will run the command in a minimal environment containing a term, path, home, main. Okay, not this one. Fast sudo fqdn, and ignore local sudoers, insert home, log host, log input, log lawyer, mail no, main path, pass promote override. The password prompt displayed by the password will normally only be used okay in palm. Required ttt, root sudo, root password, run password, set home, set logon, set environment, shell, stay uid, target, mask overready, user pt, utm awareness, visible password, password tries. This is the one. Password timeout. No. Number of minutes before the sudo password promote times out, or 0 for no timeout. The timeout may include a fractional comments component if minute voluntarily is insufficient. For example, 2.5, the default is 5. So this is the option. You can add this option in a configuration file, and if you want, then if you put it on 0, if you said password timeout is equal to 0, then it will never expire. It will remain, the password will remain there, and it will not remove from the cache. And what is this one? Timestamp timeout, number of minutes that can eclipse before sudo will ask for a password again. Okay, this one will be this one is the configuration. The timeout may include a fractional component in minute guarantee is insufficient. For example, this the default is 5. So the basically the default time is 5. After that, it will ask the password again. So with this configuration, you have many other configuration to change. Oops. And you can get it in this man page of sudoverse. Now, what we did here, we gave a sudo permission to this user 1, and now he can use. And now see, again it is asking the password because the 5 minute is over. So after the 5 minutes, it will ask the password again, and again I have to give a password. Now it will not ask the password till 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, it will ask the password again, but it is giving the permission to user 1, and user 1 is using the permission. Now let's check the other user, for example user 2. Can this user 2 also use the sudo permission? By default, normally it cannot run the fdisk, it is not getting the output of fdisk-l, but now it wants to use the sudo. So the user 2 says sudo, and I want to run fdisk command also, and I want to run it with sudo. Enter. Now it is saying what? It is giving the same information, and it is asking the password for user 2. But remember, we have not given any permission to user 2. We have not made this a member of wheel group, we have not added this user into the sudoers file, but still it is running and it is asking the password. Is it possible? What happens if I give a password and press enter? Can the command run or not run? Let's see. ABC is the password, enter. Now what it is saying here, user 2 is not in the sudoers file. So that means what? This user is not added into the sudoers file, and because of that this user is not having a sudo permission. So it cannot run the sudo and it cannot use the sudo command. But it is still getting the information and asking the password because of the command, this sudo command. The sudo command works like this. Now after giving the password, it will check the sudoers file, and then when it checks the sudoers file, it says no, you are not in the sudoers file, so you will not get the permission. One more thing, it says here that this incident will be reported. Now that means what? This incident will be reported for to the root. So if you are having a mail system, then it will generate a system mail and it will send to the root. It will send to the administrator regarding the event, and it will say everything like which user, where and when he wants to run what command he tried to run. That means it will say this is user 2, he was in this directory and he was trying to run this command on this date on this time, and the information will be sent to the root administrator. Then administrator will come to user 2 and it will ask like why you are doing this, why you want to do this, you are not having a permission, so why you are doing this. So it will send a system mail to the root, or if you are not having any mail system, still it will be reported as a log. So it will generate the security log and it will generate the report in the security log that what and who done this. That log we will see in logging command. We have a log topics, but I will just show you the log. That security, all the logs will go to where logs. Here you will get all the logs. There is a log for security. So in this log you will get the information about security parts. Let's say sudo is also related to security, and in this you will see the event. First you will see the event of user 1 who is successfully using the sudo command. Here you can see he's using the command successfully, and the last one is for user root, and what he's doing here, you can see the date, time, machine name, and it is coming from sudo, and this is the user who's run the who's generated this log, and the message is this user not in sudoers. This is the message which this user get, and when and where it runs on this terminal. The user was in this directory, test directory. You can see the user is in this test directory, and then which user command he wants to run. So you can see it wants to run root user command, and which command, so it try to run this command. So the whole information is logged, and administrator will know that he is trying to do something which is he should not do. So this is what sudo permission. So okay, so this is how the sudo permission is done, and we saw now how to assign sudo permissions.